Going on to part 2. Again, one of the strategies in doing any test is to kind of inspect a little bit. So here they want us to write an equation in slope-intercept form, and they give us 2 points. So the strategy for this would be to find first what would be the slope of this line. So using the slope formula, -5 for our y sub 2 minus 4, and then 0 minus a minus 7 gives you a positive 7. So this then is going to be a -9/7. And we see that sort of as a hint here. Now, we have part of the equation, y equals a -9/7 x. And if you note, this ordered pair is in the form of 0, b. This is the y-intercept, so that would be a -5. So pretty straightforward, bringing in material that we have reviewed a little bit in our other part. Now, for this one, it's the same thing. We have to figure out the slope. So it's going to be 2 minus 0 over 9 minus a minus 2 is a plus 2. So what this is going to give us then is a 2 over 11. Now we see that in a couple of places here, so that means we're on the right track. But so far we have the equation y equals 2/11 x, but we don't know what our b value is going to be. So we could use the point slope form, but we could also use this form, y equals mx plus b, because now we know what y is. Y is going to be a 2. M we know is 2/11, and x is going to be a 9. But we don't know what our new b will become. So to get rid of the fractions here, we're going to multiply every term by 11. Here the 11's just cancel out, but don't forget to multiply the b by 11. So this becomes 22. 2 times 9 is 18 plus 11b. Now we're going to subtract 18 from both sides, and we get a 4 here equals 11b. Divide both sides by 11, and our new b is 4/11. So up here, we're going to put in here plus 4/11. And our answer then is C. All right. Now for 23 and 24, they're giving us a basic equation in slope-intercept. Here, this one is in standard form. Again, standard form, and they are just writing out slope-intercept. But they want, when it's in standard form, our A term, this term here, to be positive. And they want the equation to go through this point. So let's do the first one first. So what do we know about this equation? They want it to be parallel. So our slope of the other equation is going to be 3 also. So we know so far y equals 3x. That will be the slope of our new equation, but we don't know what our b is going to become. So we'll keep that like so for a while. So again, we can substitute y now is a -5 equals 3 times x is a 1, and this will give rise to what our new b value would be. So this is going to be 3 that we're going to transpose, becomes a -3, and this will become a -8 equals b. So this equation is going to be this part so far plus our new b value, which is a -8. So I should just put that there as a -8. Better. Now, they don't want it in this form for both answers. They want us to convert this to standard form. So we're going to take this and bring it to the other side, where it becomes a -3x plus y equals a -8. But they don't want this a term here, this a term, to be negative. So we're going to multiply each term by a -1 to reverse all the signs. So this becomes 3x minus y equals 8. Now, there's our slope-intercept form, and there's our standard form, and that one will match up with letter D. Okay, you see it. Now we're going to do the same thing with 24, but we'll clear this up. So here for 24, we have to find what is our slope. So I'm going to solve for the letter y by bringing over this x. On this side, it becomes a -x. And then we need our new b value here, whatever that will be. But our slope now we know is a -1, or just -1x in a sense. But the slope is -1. So our y value is 2 equals our slope, which is in a sense, a -1. And our x value is 4, just substituting. And we got to find out what our new b value would be. Well, this is going to become a -4 here. When I transpose it, it becomes a negative, on the other side, a +4. So this will become 6. So our new value, b value, is 6. So our equation is going to be y equals a -x plus 6. But again, we want that in standard form now. So we're going to transpose that. On this side, it becomes a +x, and like so. So number 24 matches up with letter C. So there's our y equals a -x plus 6. And then once we move the x over, it becomes x plus y equals 6. All right, let's go on. So for number 25, we are to factor that. And you could write it again, but I'm just going to put 2 sets of parentheses. My a term is 1 here, so this just goes s, s. I'm looking for factors of 12 that add up to a 7. Well, that would be a 4 and a 3. And we are using plus signs. We FOIL it, and C, we get a correct trinomial, which in this case is B. Now it's okay that I put the 3 there and the 4 there. Could do it either way. All right, number 26. Again, it's in standard form. You cannot factor out any common factor, so our A term is 1, so this is going to be an X and an X. Now, factors of a negative 21 who add up to a positive 4. Well, 7 and a 3 give me a 21, and I need a positive 4 in the middle, so my outers will be a plus, my inners will be a negative, and when I FOIL, I get this, and then this matches up with D. Again, these can be reversed. It's perfectly okay like this. Now for number 27, as we look at this, I'll put it up here, 2 sets of parentheses. This is going to be an X and an X. Factors of 100 that add up to 20, 10 and 10, and they're both going to be positive. And the way to write this is X plus 10, the quantity squared. So this is a perfect square trinomial that will factor into letter C here. All right, how about this one? 2 sets of parentheses. Again, these are relatively easy because our A term is 1. This will be a U and this will be a U. Now, factors of a negative 45, and we'll need a V here also, that will give us a difference of 4. Well, the 9 times 5, and our middle term is negative, so this will have to be a negative 9 and a positive 5. And when I FOIL this, it checks out. So a negative and a positive. 28 is C. Okay, let's go on. Factor the trinomial that is a perfect square trinomial. Again, you can actually probably see this, but you can always just guess and check a little bit. This is going to be M. This is going to be M. And then what factors of 16 add up to 8? Well, a 4 and a 4. And they're both going to be plus. And we write this as M plus 4, the quantity squared, which is A. Looking at 30 now, this is a perfect square. This is a perfect square. So we have the differences of squares, which factors into their conjugates. So this will be 3x plus 8, 3x minus 8. Now again, you can reverse the plus and minus signs. So 3x plus 8, 3x minus 8, this is a C. All right, let's move it up so we see it better. So here we note this is a perfect square, and so is this. And a negative sign between them indicate it's the difference of perfect squares that will factor into their conjugates. 6s, got to get the right numbers here. 6s, and then 25. One will be plus, one will be minus 5. And then that's going to be t squared. We have factored them into their conjugates, and that is letter C. Now for number 32, again, pause, write it down. We want to solve this equation by factoring, if we can. Now this is going to be x, this is x. Factors of 20, a negative 20 that have a difference of 8. Well, 10 times 2 give you a difference of 8. Our middle term is positive, so the larger outers will be positive. And then we equate each of these to 0. So here this will be x equals 2. And here this will be x equals negative 10. So 2 and negative 10. 2 and negative 10 is d. Now notice, some of you may go for this one, but that's wrong. Those are the factors. Remember, when you equate each factor to 0, you transpose and the sign changes. All right, 33. Again, this will factor because by the hint, none of these are prime. Now I have a 15 here. I'm going to think it's not going to be a 15 and a 1, but I think it's going to be a 5y and a 3y. Now I have an 8. Does the 8 and 1? No, that doesn't work. So it's going to be a 4 and a 2. Now where do I put it? When I worked these out ahead of time, I tried the 4 there, it didn't work. So then I tried it here, and then I tried it there. So now my outers give me a 10. My inners give me a 12. That adds up to 22. So I'm on the right track. And they're all positive, so no problems with the signs. But now I have to equate each of these to 0. This one's already. So I'm going to transpose the 4. That becomes a negative 4 divided by 5. So there's one answer from this one. Transpose the 2. That becomes a negative 2 divided by 3. So those are my answers. So a negative 4/5 and a negative 2/3 are D. Now, again, you could watch this and, before I show the work, you want to try to be sure you understand the strategy to get to the answer. Now, that's the part we can't teach. This is the part you learn as you practice and develop skill to do these. So here we're using the Pythagorean theorem, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And if we solve for c, we get c equals the square root of a squared plus b squared. So now we just substitute. A squared is going to be 25. 5 squared. 12 squared is 144, which gives you the square root of 169. And that's a perfect square, so C equals 13. That's what this side is. And this is one of the famous right triangles too, a 5, 12, 13. Okay, we'll raise it up and get into systems of equations. Now, once again, you take time to write it down, and you want to have a method to solve. So I suggest you write them over toward the left of the page, something like this, lining up your terms, and then they're asking you to solve it by the elimination method. Well, you're going to do something to these equations to cause one of the letters to cancel out. Well, as we look at the top one, if we just multiplied that, either the top or the bottom, by a -1, and then use this protocol, rewrite them, this becomes a -1x, this becomes a -5y, and this becomes now a -32, and this one we don't have to change. So this is 6x plus 5y equals 67. Now when we put our line, adding this up, we get 5x equals 35. Divide both sides by the coefficient of x, we get x equals 7. So if x is 7 here, we could use this first equation. This will be 7 plus 5y equals 32. Now, some of this can be done mentally, but you can write it out. Subtract 7, we get 5y equals 25. Y equals 5. So there's our ordered pair, 7, 5. And that is letter A. Now here, this would be if they were, when you did it, it would be like 4 equals 0. These lines would be parallel. And for this one, if you did it, it ended up, let's say 0 equals 0. A true statement, they're actually the same equation. And, we're not going to do every single kind, but giving you some background on how to do it. All right, we'll move it up. Now, for this one, they want us to use substitution. Now, remember, you could always use elimination as well, but since they asked for substitution, we'll use it. The key is, if x is equal to something, we could solve this equation for x. X would equal, transpose that y, a -8y plus 15. Now we have our other equation, a -2x, but we're going to use this value to substitute for that x. So we put that there, -8y plus 15. That's what we're saying x is. So where this x is, that's what we do. So now we clear parentheses. A -2 times a -8x is a positive 16y. A -2 times 15 is a -30. And then our plus 7y equals 16. Note we have an equation with only one kind of variable. So we group our like terms together. This gives us a 23y. I'm going to add 30 to both sides and get 46. Divide both sides by 23. Y equals 2. So if y equals 2, we just need to find out what x is. So we're going to take our 2 to this equation here. You can use either one. So we have x plus y is 2. So 8 times 2 is 16 equals 15. we just transpose that positive 16 to this side becomes a negative 16. So we have x equals a negative 1. And if you were sure and you're doing multiple choice, you could also pretty much pick out the one that is correct. But again, you're not going to have multiple choice. This is just the format we're using as a review. Gives you some ideas what the answers look like too. Now for number 37, they still want us to use substitution. So again, solve for one of the letters. Here, x is going to equal a negative, just transpose that, 6y minus 3. And then you put that in the other equation. So 3 times what x is, which we said was this now, negative 6y minus 3, and then plus 7y equals a negative 9. Okay. So this becomes a negative 18y. 3 times negative 3 is a negative 9. Plus 7y equals a negative 9. Now notice when you add 9 here and add 9 here, this is going to become a 0. And when we add a negative 18y and a positive 7, this gives us a negative 11y. Now you might say, oh, that's terrible. No, this is okay. We're going to divide both sides by a negative 11. And we get y equals 0. So you go to this equation here. If y is 0, x is going to be a negative 3. So that's our ordered pair, negative 3 and 0. Let me clear this up so we can see it. Negative 3 and 0. It's B. All right. Well, there's 40 questions. We're getting to the end. Now, we already did word problems, and we used 2 variables. Some of those could be done with 1, but we're going to be using 2 here. Take a moment, pause, read it, see if you can come up with equations. And again, generally we're using x and y. So as we read this, Marty has 70,000. She's going to invest it in 2 parts. So x plus y is 70,000. Now a portion of it she's going to invest at 12%. So we'll make this portion x. And then the rest of it in bonds at 11%. We'll make this y. So 12% of x plus 11% of y gives us this much interest. So multiply everything by 100. Now, they asked us to use the elimination method here. So let's do that. I'll clean it up and then we'll show you that in some detail. But again, you try it first. So again, I suggest you put these over on the left of any paper. And you want to eliminate one of the letters. And we want to find the one for 12% here. So that's going to be the x. So let's remove the y's. And what would we have to multiply this equation by so that I get a negative 11y here when I rewrite this? And if you said a negative 11, that is correct. So negative 11 times this is a negative 11x. Negative 11 times the y is a negative 11y. And then a negative 11 times this is a negative 77 with 4 zeros. Now I did these already too, so not trying to do that from the hip here, so to speak. So now this one we just rewrite the equation. This is going to be 12x plus 11y equals 81 with 4 zeros. So as we put our line, these cancel out. I'm just left with an x. And when I do the subtraction here, I end up with 40,000. And I look there, and there it is, right there. Okay, let's pause and take a look at the last one now. It says here, Tim and Judy mix 2 kinds of feed for pedigree dogs. They wish to make a 32 pounds of feed that's worth this per pound by mixing a less expensive with a more expensive. How many pounds of the cheaper kind should they mix? Round your answer to the nearest pound if necessary. Okay, pause, read it again, see if you can come up with your equations. So x plus y equals 32. Now the x is worth 11 cents. The y is worth 54 cents. And we want to end up with a mixture that's worth 31 cents of how many pounds we're going to end up with? 32. Hopefully you got something like this. So we're going to multiply everything by 100 here. And I'm going to clean this up too, so we can decide what's our next step. Now I'm also going to multiply this 31 by 32 and get 992 here, cleaning it up just a little bit more. Now my answer is I want to know how many pounds of the cheaper kind. So I want to get rid of the y's, so when I solve this, I can solve it for x. So what do I have to multiply this top line by so I can get rid of a 54y? And if you said a negative 54, that would be correct. So again, the protocol, put this over on the left so you can show what you've done on the right. So this will become a negative 54x. This will become a negative 54y. And this will become a negative 17,000 or 1,728. Again, I did these already. Now this one we're just going to copy. 11x plus 54y equals 992. Now the y's are going to cancel out. I'm going to end up with a negative 43 x. When I do the subtraction, I end up with a negative 736. divide both sides by a negative 43, get a positive x. And then when I do this division, I end up with a positive 17 point something that I round off to 17, which is right here. So again, these were 40 questions. On your final, there's only 25 or 28 or so. So there's a few more, but we can't cover everything. Each is different but similar. You got an idea what things are like. You can play this at a faster speed, watch it again. Again, you want to try it before I give the answer to see if you are developing the technique needed to get the right answer. We can kind of show you, but until you get the mastery. All right, well, good luck, and hopefully this is helpful. We'll wind this up here.